Hi there, Joel at Earth Tools here. We're going to do a little run through of the handlebar reversing and PTO lockout system on a G110. This is covered in our new tractor setup video, but we're going to have a more of a specific video just on this process. So this is a G110 tractor. This is the reverse handle up here that you would engage reverse and forward on your wheel direction. It's connected to a cable, and that cable runs down all the way down to here, where it's hooked up to the reverse linkage on the tractor body itself. You want to come in here and bring the camera in a little closer so we can see this. This is what we're calling the reverse, the tractor reverser lever here. This is the reverse cable linkage. We've got the cable hooked up to this little L bracket. It's like an L-shaped bracket here with a rod and a spring in it. So the G110 is the only tractor we offer that has an automatic system built into the handlebars that reverses the action of this whole reverser mechanism when you turn the handlebars around. This is so your reverse handle at the handlebar is always used in the same mode. That is, forward is always forward, and reverse, flip back, is always reverse, regardless of whether the handlebars are in this position or swung around over the engine. This linkage reverses to take care of that. So as you can see, if you watch this linkage down here now, right now the tractor direction control up here on the handlebars is in forward, so it would be forward going this way. When I pull this back, it's going to pull this thing back like that. So the cable is pulling the linkage back. The spring, which is right here, pushes it back in the other direction to engage forward. So the cable pulls it into reverse. The spring pushes it back into forward. If you bring the camera a little closer and look right down here, you'll see that the reverse lever on the transmission actually moves between two stops. You'll have to bring that camera up so we can see the two stops. You got a stop here and a stop here. The spring, as you can see, pushes it back against this one stop here, and the cable, it's all right, you can leave the camera pan down at the bottom. The cable will pull it up to this stop. So that's the action. This limits the movement of this reverser lever down here at the bottom. Now, when we're going to go ahead and turn these handlebars around, as you can see, we already have a mower attached to this tractor. Obviously, you would never run this tractor with a mower on it with the handlebars in this position, because you'd cut your feet off. This is the soil working position of the handlebars, where you'd normally have a tiller attached. But I'm going to be running a mower next, so I'm going to go ahead and turn these handlebars around. So I'm going to pull my little pins out here, drop the washers as usual, just like in the rest of the videos. Slide these out of their little plastic joints. Just let them sit up here on the handlebars. And now I'm going to hit the handlebar release lever. Now, one thing that's very important here is that you have this forward and reverse lever at the handlebar in the forward mode. If you try to reverse the handlebars with this thing pulled back into reverse, this spring, as we saw down here, is already collapsed. And when you try to spin this thing around, there's no room in the linkage for additional room, and you'll end up stretching the cable out. So make sure this thing is in forward before you try this operation of turning the handle. So I've released my two shift levers. I'll now push down on the handlebar release lever and bring this around. As you can see, this thing is flipping over. How this thing is flipped over is extremely simple. There's just some gears at the bottom of the handlebar base here. In fact, you can come up, bring the camera up here so we can see a little closer. You can see there's gears right here that mesh with gears down in here. The gears down in here I'm touching right now, they are attached to a shaft that runs across down here, and the shaft is the axis that this thing pivots over on. So I'm holding this reverse. I'm holding my handlebar release lever down the entire time I'm doing this operation so that I don't scrape the decal off of my gear shift over here. And then I bring these things around. And as you get to the halfway point, you'll feel a little bit of resistance, because it's kind of the point at which this spring action needs to reverse at some point. It's going to have to flip the other direction to invert that reverse function. So right there, it gets a little tight. The other thing that happens around the halfway point is this cable just needs to be redirected a little bit. This cable which comes down to the reverse lever, I'm going to have to spin it over to this side, and see, it's kind of, yeah, it's finally switched over center there, and that spring pushed it back the opposite direction. Now as the tractor gets some age on it and these parts dry up with their original factory lubricant, that operation may not be as smooth anymore. So you can lubricate it a couple times a year. I've got some lanolin-based fluid film here, but any Teflon or silicone lubricant will do the trick. I'm going to lube up this whole sliding rod with the spring on it. I'm going to get a little lube on the pivot point here. You get a little lube on the pivot point of this axis where the whole thing flips over. You can shoot it down in here to get it on the gears. You can even shoot it in here in the back of this deal right by these two clamping screws to get lubrication inside this column where that thing pivots around its pivot post, because that'll eventually dry up in there. So with all those parts lubricated a little better, I think and you can also just hit the cable here while you're at it. This action should be a little smoother next time. I'm going to go ahead and bring it back. We'll watch that thing flip itself over. Again, a little resistance there in the middle as that spring has to reverse its action, but it works. It clips it back. Yeah, it was easier that time because now we've got some lube there. So that's doing what it should. Bring that back around. Direct the cable around. Right there. Okay. Now, I'm going to bring these back one more time. When the handlebars are in this position, this is, as I mentioned earlier, the soil working position of the tractor. So this is where you'd be running a tiller, rotary plow, power harrow, or something like this, some rear PTO device. So you'd be walking on this side of the machine, and obviously if you engage reverse when the handlebars are in this position, you don't want the soil working equipment to back up on you and the rototiller tines cut your feet off. So there's a safety built into this thing. If you bring the camera around here, you can see how that safety works. This reverser lever down on the tractor transmission has this arm affixed to the back. It's actually part of it. It's all one piece of steel. And this arm sticks back here right next to the PTO shift lever. PTO shift lever has this sleeve stuck on it with a knob. Well, that knob and this piece of steel will interface. That is, if I've got the PTO engaged, which is hard to get engaged now that the tractor's not actually running. Let me reach under here and turn the mower deck a little bit so I can, there we go, we got it engaged. Okay, so now the PTO is engaged. You can see this knob comes right down on there. Well, if I were to pull this thing into reverse, well, it won't work too well if the handlebar isn't plugged in. Let me get this plugged in here. So, with that thing plugged in the way it would be when you're running it, you pull this back, and look, this thing came up, rubbed against the underside of this, it actually kicked the PTO back out of gear. So if you were tilling and you engage reverse, it would automatically disengage the PTO so you don't till your feet up. That's a pretty good idea because most people like their feet. When you re-engage forward, it doesn't automatically re-engage the PTO. You just have to manually put it back into gear. That's fine. So that's all great and fine. But now what happens when we turn the handlebars around? When we turn the handlebars around, this whole thing inverts itself, as you can see, as we've demonstrated. But now the tractor direction is totally reversed. Now this becomes forward. This is not reverse anymore. This is forward. This is reverse. And we need to engage the PTO with the tractor going in this direction. So now if I try to engage my PTO, look, it runs into that thing, so it won't work, right? Well, that's why when the shift rod has been removed from this, you can raise this up. It comes up just about 1/8 of an inch, just enough to get this little notch out of this thing here, and you turn this around. Then it drops back into place. Now it's nice and firm. This is on the wrong side. It doesn't interfere with this anymore. So now you can mow all you want, and you can engage the PTO with the tractor either going forward or reverse. Now, slip this thing back through here. You cannot pick up this sleeve and reverse it while this thing is slid through here. So it makes you, this is something you do while you're turning the handlebars around and while you have that thing disengaged. Let's flip this over. And this little bracket at the top doesn't look like it does anything, but it's doing a lot. It keeps you from screwing up here. That is, if I put my mower on and you know, before I can even plug this thing back in, look, I can try to put it through there, but it won't come through the joint far enough to get the clip back on it. So I know that I've done something wrong. Oh yeah, I forgot to turn this thing around. When you turn it around the proper direction, it goes back through fine, like so, and you've got plenty of clearance to put the knob or the clip back on there. Same thing, when you turn the handles back around the other way, this little bracket forces you to turn this thing around. It forces you to remember to get the knob on the proper side for the type of implement you're using. So then we'd take this, go ahead and repeat this function on the other side. Get this thing plugged back in. Alright. One other quick thing I'm going to mention is the transport gear. And before I do that, even though this is boring as tears, or it's boring you to tears, rather, I'm going to go ahead and turn the handlebars back around. Okay, so on the gear shift selector, and actually if you want to bring the camera up this way, and we'll look at fourth gear here. So on the selector you've got fourth gear, which is your transport gear. That's the gear that goes really, really fast, and it's designed to pull a trailer. Fourth gear does not have a bi-directional arrow next to it, which means fourth gear only goes this way. It goes engine first. It's to pull a trailer, like I said. The tow hitch is here, so you're pulling a trailer in this direction. Well, fourth gear doesn't function through the reverser on this thing, which means if you engage reverse while it's in fourth, it just keeps going forward. They don't want you to engage fourth gear when you're in the mowing mode with the handlebars, because the thing would just run you over in a second, because it would be fourth gear reverse. It would be in the reverse direction with a mower on it. So they really don't want you to do that. That's why this little tab is welded onto the gear shift, and it's why this little tab is affixed to this. It's actually affixed to the same rod that flips over the reverse linkage. So here's what happens. Watch that. When I turn this thing around, reverse the handlebars, this whole thing reverses around and ends up right there. Well, now if I were to try to engage fourth gear, guess what? It doesn't go, because that thing catches it. So I'm in third, I get a little past third, and I'm hit kind of a neutral position, but I can't get all the way into fourth because that thing keeps me out. So that's a safety that'll keep you out of trouble. Now, the potential issue is that if the last gear you were running the tractor in was fourth gear, say you just were in fourth gear, you drove it into the barn, and then you decided to put your mower on there, so you think, okay, I'm going to turn the handlebars around, and you forgot to take it out of fourth gear. What'll happen is that bracket will swing around, and it'll hit against the bottom of this thing, and you'll say, what's the matter with this thing? It just won't seem to, it stopped right there because this bracket actually hit, and it'll kind of jam you into fourth gear and you can't get out of it. Well, that's an issue. So just get the thing out of fourth gear before you turn the handlebars around, and you won't have that problem. Actually, I just kind of screwed it up there a little bit. Yeah, but now it's fine. So, oh yeah, that's because this is all, I forgot to flip my cable. I think that covers it. So, you know, a little lube on the parts, a little common sense. Don't turn the handlebars around while it's in reverse. Don't turn the handlebars around while it's in fourth gear. And then you're good to go. Hook these all up. We'll be ready to mow here. These washers aren't really worth too much. A lot of times people just throw them away and use the clips. Good to go. Thanks for watching.